Welcome everyone to the January 18th zoning board of adjustment meeting. Start over.
Steve. There it is.
We good?
Yeah.
Okay, welcome everyone to the January 18th, 2023 zoning board of adjustment meeting for the town of Barrington. We are calling the meeting to order at 7:04. For those of you so inclined, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. As is typical, we'll do a roll call attendance, starting with me, Tracy Hardikoff, CBA. George
Bailey here.
Carol Huffins here.
Andre McBride here.
Technically, Paul should be sitting in.
Yes, where is Paul? Paul, can I have you recuse after?
All done. Paul, keep it over here.
Thank you, sir. So tonight we have a continued public hearing. And I think at this point, Mr.
You want me to go back
Trudeau,
up?
yeah, I'm sorry, will be recusing himself at his own request. Which brings me to case 2408 GR 22-3 variance / special exception, owner Norma Bearden. And who's here to represent this client? Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, Christopher Berry with Berry Surveying and Engineering.
Very good. So this is a request by the applicant for the following variances to Article 6, Section 6.2.6 perimeter buffer to allow 14 proposed driveways to access through a buffer along Young Road. Article 6, Section 6.2.6 perimeter buffer to allow proposed subdivision to reduce the front perimeter buffer. Article 6, Section 6.2.6 perimeter buffer to allow the front buffer to contain individual houses on Young Road in the general residential zoning district. Before we continue, as there is a recusal, is it appropriate? I need permission from the applicant to proceed with just 4 seated ZBA members.
I'll agree.
And that means that at no time could you come back and appeal because of the reduced number. Very good. Please note that. Proceed, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Christopher Berry again with Berry Surveying and Engineering. I'm going to first by bringing you through a few of the planning ideals that go into conceiving a project of this type and size, then bring you through the variance requests as well as the special exception requests, and then follow with some sort of closing comments and remarks to some of the information that's been provided to the ZBA over the last month or so with respect to our application.
Sorry to interrupt. Do we have place to this after that? I can't get you in the.
Well, she's doing that.
Okay.
I want to make a comment.
Chop that.
I'm going to interrupt you,
Okay.
Chris. I meant to open this meeting by letting the public know the zoning board of adjustments role in the town of Barrington is not to tell landowners how to use their land.
Oh, that's good.
It is also not our role to limit the building of the number of projects in this town. The zoning board of adjustment is beholden to zoning ordinances that have been approved by the residents of this town. Our main job is to hear cases in a quasi judicial capacity, listening to fact, not fiction, not opinion, just fact, and deciding whether a variance, special request, or an administrative appeal, administrative oversight, what's the word I'm looking for, John? Yeah, so if an administrative appeal, in other words, you didn't like what the zoning administrator said to you, and these are the rules that he told you to live under, or she told you to live under, and we hear that and we would overturn that. So in no way is it the ZBA's job to limit what is happening for growth in the town of Barrington. And I find it often off-putting that seems to be the understanding of the public. So please understand that's not our role. The other thing is there was quite a few comments about how the members of this board would be able to function in hearing a case that is brought before us and is a case that potentially represents one of the people that sit on this board. And the answer to that is every one of us that sits on this board goes out of our way to recuse ourselves when appropriate, because we took oath of office to uphold the Constitution for the state of New Hampshire, to uphold what it is that the residents of the town of Barrington prefer to have as their zoning ordinances. So please understand, you can have an opinion one way or another about public service. We are all volunteer appointed people sitting here, and we take that oath of office very seriously. Continue, please, Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that. So we're here representing the applicant, Paul Thibodeau, and the landowner, a tax map 240 lot 8, which is on Young Road here in Barrington, New Hampshire. As the chairs pointed out in the call of the case, the site is approximately 65.5 acres in size. As I've pointed out in our application, has a vast amount of frontage on Young Road, has a number of special features to it. The applicant asked Barry Surveying and Engineering to produce what is known as an existing conditions plan for the site. This includes the topography of the site and the jurisdictional wetlands of the site, and asked for any of the special features of the site that would be required for subdivision of the parcel to be identified as part of the project survey effort. In so doing, we hired John Hayes, who is both a certified wetland scientist as well as a certified soil scientist, to go to the site and delineate the jurisdictional wetlands on site, which includes the poorly drained boundary of the wetlands, and also delineate on site the very poorly drained soils on site, which determine, in this particular case, the limits of the prime wetland number 4, which is located partially on our project site. So as you can see, we have some jurisdictional wetlands to the south side of the project. We have some jurisdictional poorly drained wetlands towards the center of the project here, which I'll come back to in a moment. We have wetlands that enter the site under Young Road. There's a new box culvert here, newer box culvert. And towards the center of the site, you'll see a large wetland system that you can see from most satellite views of the property. Inside of the poorly drained boundary, there is a very poorly drained wetland system that is situated inside of that system, which generates the limits of prime wetland number 4. And so that's delineated on this plan and is in referenced a number of times in the writings that we've submitted to the board. These are all on the ground delineations. They're not remote sensed. They are delineated in the field and then survey located through conventional means and methods for survey accuracy and mapping standards as provided for the state of New Hampshire ethics and standards, but also in the Barrington rules and regulations. There's a large offsite beaver pond that's founded. It resides on partially on the project in question, partially on land that is owned by the town of Barrington and is eased by Southeast Land Trust, and a portion of which resides on Mr. Lindsay's property to the south. That area, when it ponds high enough, it does drain down through our property through this small wetland system here, and then enters the larger complex of the wetland system on our site. This then drains down to what's known as Richardson Pond. So all of these topographic features are important, and how they work and interplay with one another are all important when laying out a proposed project, because as you can see, the slope of the land is generally towards those wetland systems. away from Young Road. There's a large piece of upland at the back of our property that drains down to that site. And there are obviously large off-site areas that drain down through the site to that wetland area that's been deemed to be a prime wetland by the town of Barrington's zoning ordinance. Few other key factors to this piece of property, which I've alluded to. The town of Barrington owns the most abutting parcel, both on the eastern side, but also along the northern boundary. That parcel is eased by Southeast Land Trust and is part of a larger complex of open lands that have been conserved through many, many efforts by the residents, town of Barrington, as well as the efforts of Southeast Land Trust and your Conservation Commission. We recognize that before we even entered the parcel, how this piece of property is situated when you look at those parcels. The property across the street was recently subdivided within the last 12, 15 years through conventional means of subdivision. A standard subdivision was proposed at that time, and the conventional 200 feet of frontage was used, minimum 80,000 square foot lot sizes and et cetera. Those requirements were used for that type of subdivision. It's unclear to me whether or not a conservation subdivision in the form that we're proposing was available at the time. There is a large off-site wetland or on-site wetland at the rear of those sites that does drain down through that property and enters our property in this location here. And so that's how those two properties are sort of hydraulically connected. So when we start,
How many housing units or lots are across the street that you're discussing?
yeah, there's 12
Well, very good.
single-family residences across the street. That parcel has, again, similar to ours, in some ways, it has a large wetland at the rear of that site also. As part of that project, those that travel along Young Road will note there were traffic improvements that were made as part of that project. Lines of sight were opened up, cleared. There was a large hill that was removed. There was a structure that was sort of almost in the roadway that was removed as part of that effort. And so the alignment of, or the visual alignment of Young Road was improved during that effort at the time. And there was a fire cistern that was installed at the time of that project to both service that project as well as any future development that might take place in the surrounding areas for firefighting purposes. So when we start looking at a parcel of land and how to best develop it, we look at what are the critical areas, what are the key features, where are the developable pieces of land. We do that through the process of both land surveying, but also remote sensing. We would point out that when you look at the habitat map provided by New Hampshire Fish and Game, the center of the parcel is the highest and most critical habitat, the 100-foot buffer. Adjacent to that is also included in that highest ranking habitat. All of the other landscape in that area is what's known as supporting landscape. So it's important to know that both the town of Barrington, but also Fish and Game has this idea that that area is of importance for many, many reasons. So when we're talking about developing around a prime wetland, we have two buffers that we really need to be concerned with. The buffer to jurisdictional wetlands, which is a simple 50-foot buffer. That is at the limits of what's known as the poorly drained jurisdictional boundary. And the 100-foot buffer around the prime wetland system, which sits inside of that wetland. And that's to ensure that there's a larger protection around that prime wetlands because of all of the natural features that are important to that ecosystem. So we look at areas to develop it. We look at areas that are sensitive, and then we apply the underlying zoning basics and principles to the lot to determine the underlying yield of the property. And so I think it's easy to point out that there are large amounts of supportable land at the front of the site. As presented on the yield plan, we can develop the front of this property. There are large areas of uplands at the rear of the site, and the yield plan would propose to develop those areas as part of roadway infrastructure. That roadway infrastructure would be designed to town standards and would be built in such a way that eventually would be taken over by the town and would be maintained in perpetuity in that way, if accepted by the select board and the town vote. That's not the best way to develop the site, given all of the features that I've just previously described. That yield plan provides for a small wetland crossing. It would be outside of the prime wetland area. It would be outside the prime wetland buffer, but it would still require a wetland crossing. We would propose a cul-de-sac in an area that's two cul-de-sacs in an area that would be very close to and adjacent.
I'm gonna interrupt you. Vice Chair Bailey had a quick question.
Mr. Barry, when you're just talking about that, coming across the wetlands there with the passageway there with the driveway. And my question is, as we know, that's a strong area for replenishment of water for the aquifer and everything else. How much damage, or if there is going to be any damage from that? Are you ready to answer that? What, if there is, there isn't?
Yes, so I can answer that because
Please.
what I'm referring to currently is a theoretical yield plan. What we're currently proposing does not propose any wetland crossings, does not propose any buffer impacts, does not propose housing in close proximity to the wetlands or the wetland buffers. And so this plan, in contrast to the yield plan, has no direct environmental impact to the wetland systems. The yield plan would propose a wetland crossing. So this plan does not.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I just want to clarify. You said that behind this is the Barrington owns the land and it's in conservation easement.
Yes.
Being a conservation subdivision, I'm assuming that the wetland in the back would be in conservation easement.
Yes, ma'am.
So that would actually extend and protect a larger chunk of land should those be, both parcels be in conservation.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. We're kind of jumping ahead in my presentation.
Sorry, we'll let you go back to it, but we tend to lose track of the questions that we have. My other question was, if you did bring a road in along the back side of that, you'd still need driveways, you'd still have the roadway. Would you increase the amount of impermeable surface by doing that,
Yes,
allowing more runoff into the pond
yes.
area? Okay.
So,
I don't, yeah, that's fine.
so one of the items that I point out in my presentation, in my writings to the board, is that this project in its current presentation has a substantially reduced amount of impact on the land. It opens up the amount of land that would be available and contiguous with other areas that are conserved. It would propose the same or similar amount of housing that the yield plan would propose. We're not here tonight requesting variances to increase density one bit. That question would be answered by the planning board, whether or not 20, 23, or 2 houses is appropriate for this particular site. What we're here asking for tonight is the availability for us to utilize the conservation subdivision in a format that was not conceived when that ordinance was written. So when you take all of the planning ideals that we're discussing, where we keep this open area free, unpaved, unencumbered by development, affixed to other areas that have the same qualities, and place that development along the front of the project site, based on this lot's frontage and shape, the way your ordinance is written, a conservation subdivision is not practical on this site without the request for variances. The reason for that is section 6626, which requires the perimeter buffers, and it does not discriminate against the front perimeter buffer. So as you can see, as part of our project design and the open space design, we're providing for a 100-foot buffer here on the south. We're providing for a 100-foot buffer along the north. Clearly, we have open areas and buffers along the rear of the site, so that's not a concern. But your ordinance really conceives of an open space design where a road is installed and housing units are sprouted off from that interior road. And as you can see, the best area to do that is in an area and two areas where we would critically want to preserve that land. We don't want to utilize that land for development. We want to keep those areas open. So in that way, your ordinance is really contrary to this specific site. And therefore, this site is special, contains special features to it in contrast to the underlying zoning ordinance. A few other key things that we wanted to point out. We were very careful. We understand that Young Road unfortunately has become a cut through. It has become, as soon as we open up sightlines on roadways, people travel faster. We understand that. And so we are very cautious here this evening, knowing that in the underlying yield plan, we would propose 14 curb cuts on our frontage. Though we are taking that same amount of density and placing it all along the frontage of our project, we want to be careful not to increase the number of curb cuts. And so one of the requests here tonight is a special exception to allow for joint driveways to not necessarily come off the front of the lot. And the sole purpose of that is to ensure that the number of driveways proposed is equal in both the yield plan and also the proposed conservation subdivision. So as an example, this particular lot configuration, lots 20-17 and 20-16, we're proposing that the driveway access for both of those lots come over one location, and it is not over the lot's frontage, and therefore is contrary to your zoning, and therefore requires a special exception. I also want to point out that the criteria for a zoning variance and a criteria for a special exception are drastically different in terms of criteria that needs to be met and proven to the board. A few things we wanted to point out as we move forward through the planning process is this project, with any sort of approval or discussion with the board here tonight, is not the end of the road for this project. There's a lot of planning, a lot of permitting that's required to move through to the planning board. They will review things such as traffic on the site, sight lines for each one of the driveways, the effects of potential impervious coverage on the site, wetlands, wetland buffers, all of those unit density, things of that nature, well locations, sewage disposal areas, all of those types of things that normally come as part of the planning process are still to come. We're asking for 3 variances here this evening. The first, again, has to do with the front buffer. And so along each one of these lots that we take frontage on Young Road, we're proposing that the 100-foot buffer as required be part of the lot, but we are proposing a driveway gain access through that buffer. Again, your conservation subdivision does not conceive of the fact that you could have a conservation subdivision along the frontage of a road. And therefore, having the driveways go through the front buffer is contrary to your ordinance, but is not contrary to this layout. It is not contrary to other layouts that have been approved by this board in the past and the planning board in the past. The second variance request is actually in direct relation to trying to ensure that this project contains some additional buffers to some of the wetlands, the critical areas on site. And so on lots 12, 13, 14, and 15, we're requesting a variance to allow for the front structure to be allowed, or the front buffer to be reduced from 100 feet to 40 feet. In the underlying zone, the lot is required to have 200 feet of frontage and required to have a 40-foot front setback. Not a front buffer, a front setback. So in this particular case, all we're asking is that those particular lots have the buffer reduced from 100 feet down to 40 feet. There would still be a buffer there. It is reduced. The reasoning behind this is we understand that this area contains steeper slopes, adjacent to wetlands, adjacent to a prime wetland, and therefore ensuring that the structures are pulled as far forward as reasonably practical while still maintaining the underlying balance in the zone, the buffer, is trying to be met. It's been stated in a few of the writings to the board that we're proposing to go in and clear all the buffers on site and propose houses there. Nothing could be further from the truth. We're proposing a 100-foot buffer reduced down to 40 feet in some specific areas that would have driveway accesses through them. This is not unlike what was done on Toland Road. And I think we can all agree that that subdivision was much better laid out and designed than what could have been done in a conventional format. Same number of units, yes, required variances, but was a much better, well thought out plan that I think serves the community well. We have instilled the same amount of thought and creativity in this plan that they did in theirs for the same purposes. The last variance that we're requesting is more administrative than it is technical in nature. The rule, same 626, requires that none of the physical lots can be within the 100-foot buffer. Clearly, we need to have our lots be within the 100-foot buffer, or we wouldn't have lots that have frontage on a class 5 road and therefore could not gain access to those lots. So the question really comes down to these variances. Is this the best way to approach this project in a conservation subdivision, or is the best way a conventional subdivision? And we're pleading with the board that this conservation approach, regardless of the number of units, is the best approach for this particular project. Madam Chair, do you want me to move through the 5 criteria for each of the variances, or would you like to allow for public input first?
Well, I'd like you to move through them. I'm going to ask you though, are the criteria, do they vary amongst the 3 requests?
Only in creativity and writing.
Okay, I think I'll have you move through them if you would, and then we'll go to.
Would you like me to summarize all 3 in one summation of the 5 criteria for each of the 3 variances?
I think what's most appropriate, you stated that potentially 2 of them, so one of them has a criteria that is somewhat different. I assume that's special exception.
So we have 3 variance requests. And
Yeah.
1 special
Okay.
exception request.
So go ahead and move through the criteria. Please note any of the criteria that would apply to only one of the variances or 2 of the variances.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the first portion of the litmus test is the special conditions of the property. So the underlying law on this is that owing to the special conditions of the property, the lot cannot be used in a way without creating an unnecessary hardship to the applicant. So in this particular case, we have a lot that's 65.5 acres. We have over a half a mile of road frontage, and therefore our lot depth is only a certain distance. It's a special condition in this particular case. No other lot in the area is like this. Another special condition of the property is all of the environmental aspects of this design. No other lot in the area, free for development, has those attributes associated with it. And so we're simply pointing out that with those special attributes, when you apply your conservation subdivision, we're not permitted by right to use the conservation subdivision, which seems foolish in light of all of the areas that we're trying to protect. And by not permitting the use of a conservation subdivision, specifically when it's most appropriate for the site, is an unnecessary hardship to both the applicant and the landowner. That criteria would follow through with all 3 of the requests for the 626. The spirit of the ordinance is clearly to permit landowners to develop their property in the most reasonable way possible, in the most respectful way possible, as permitted in the underlying zone. However, that same ordinance does not contemplate this type of project. And therefore, I think the spirit of the ordinance would be to allow for the applicant and the landowner to develop the site and we consider the most respectful way possible when considering all of the special features of the parcel. Granting the variance will not result in the diminution of surrounding property values. We are not asking for a development of any size that would not ordinarily be permitted in the underlying zone. Say that also knowing that this board does not determine density, but whether or not this project design with this number of units is proposed or a smaller project is proposed does not negate the fact that these variances would be needed to develop the site regardless of density size. The use of each one of these lots in the underlying zone is not inconsistent with all of the surrounding properties, specifically across the street, residential in nature. The southerly property is developed residentially, and therefore there is no diminution in the type or use, and therefore land value. Some may say that the development of the land will diminish the value of everybody's land around us, though as history has proven, development done well and done respectfully maintains, if not raises people's value in the area. Again, value is not determined by things such as watersheds and other such environmental factors. All of those need to be considered as part of a project plan, but not necessarily create value as part of a project. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. The test for this is whether or not varying from the underlying variant or underlining zoning requirements to the applicant's benefit causes harm to both the ordinance and the general public. And in this particular case, we feel as though it does not cause any difference in how the site is developed. In fact, we feel it's done in a more suited way for the project site, and therefore substantial justice is met. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Public interest and spirit are nearly identical in nature. And the lack of the ordinance's ability to conceive a frontage subdivision in a conservation subdivision format, though would seemingly require an applicant to use it in situations that seem most appropriate, would be in the public's interest for this project to move forward. Now, again, I just want to point out to Madam Chair and the board, I've summarized each one of those areas in my writings. I did not read verbatim all of the writings, but we do want to ensure that the full text of the writing is submitted for the board's review and consideration. Special exceptions as they relate to the few driveways that will not have frontage over their, or driveways over their frontage. The first criteria for this is that there's no detriment to the property values in the vicinity of the project. We're proposing the same exact number of driveways that we would in a conventional subdivision. We're not increasing that number. We were careful not to do that. Each one of the driveway locations will be designed in a way that meets the town of Barrington's requirements and general NHDOT guidelines. No hazard is going to be caused to the public or adjacent landowners. Through this is the test number 2. There's no additional housing units proposed over what is permitted in the underlying zone, and therefore there's no increase in hazard due to this project. In fact, we would submit to the board that with reduced infrastructure and closer proximity to public facilities, that this is a better layout when you consider access to those things. No creation of traffic safety or hazard. Substantial traffic and congestion will result in the vicinity of the proposed development. Here again, the number of trips to and from the project site does not change with the project style. And therefore should not be a problem or consideration as part of this design. There's no excessive demand on municipal services. This project, as designed, actually reduces the demand on public services that would be needed for the project site. With a reduction of roads, impervious surfaces, sediment erosion, potential for runoff. More importantly, channelization of flows from roads. This project design is laid out. We have more of a disconnected flow with each one of the housing units. Each one of the driveways is more disconnected than they would be in a conventional subdivision. Proposed use will not result in degradation of the existing surface or groundwater quality standards. There's no change in the access from yield plan development style to the proposed development style that would create degradation. Again, this particular project design, there would be a large reduction in the amount of impervious surfaces and therefore would increase the amount of water that's infiltrated on site naturally, reduce the amount of buffers that would be removed, and reduce the potential for environmental impact at the wetland crossing. In closing, I just want to respond briefly to the comments that we received from the general public.
Chris, if I might just have a question, there's someone online that could, just because of our glare in here, do you mind if I put up your plans on a share screen so people at home can?
Feel free.
Okay, thank you.
Before you respond to those, Mr. Berry, after you do that, Vanessa, you could give a synopsis of what he's about to respond to, I think for the flow of the audience and the people watching that makes more sense. So, all of those quick synopsis of each of those that have been reviewed by all of the ZBA members, and then have you respond. Otherwise, I feel like the public won't necessarily know what the response is to.
So they're not point by point responses. They're brief responses.
Okay.
It's intimated in the writings.
Then please proceed.
Again, wanted to point out, it's perceived in the public that we're here asking for permission to increase density on a site. That's not what we're here for. We're here asking to utilize the conservation subdivision ordinance on a parcel of land where it was not conceived in the past. The number of units that are proposed, it's a planning board issue and not a zoning board issue. The variances requested tonight are the direct and result and effort of the conservation efforts that I brought up as part of my initial presentation. And so they're in a direct effort to try and protect the same things that much of the public is concerned about. I think I've spoken to the special conditions of this piece of property, but as I've pointed out earlier in the presentation, there are other parcels of land that have been developed that had less frontage, less acreage, and were done so at a higher intensity than this project is proposed. So this frontage style conservation subdivision has been done before. It has been done well. And we hope to do the same. With respect to the wetlands, the prime wetlands, we offer that, again, these are all on-site delineations done by professionals that hold licenses in those professions. The 50-foot buffer is fully respected around the wetlands. The 100-foot prime wetland buffer is fully respected. There are no vernal pools on the project site. There are no areas of other sensitivities such as streams that are not demonstrated on the plan. It was intimated that this site contains a flood zone. You review the FEMA flood maps, the site does not contain a flood zone. We acknowledge the fact that water does flow under Young Road, probably does so in an aggressive rate when it rains. There are areas that flow through this property, as I pointed out in the past, probably do so in an aggressive rate when it rains. But that does not make this property within a flood zone. The property is not located within an aquifer protection zone. Though this water likely ends up in the aquifer, we are not in an aquifer protection zone. We're not in a recharge zone. As I pointed out, a habitat assessment, if you look at the Fish and Game's assessment charts, center of the property that we're trying to preserve is the highest ranking habitat the state has. And that connects down to Richardson Pond and connects to other areas that are also conserved. And we're proposing to conserve that area for that very same reason. With regard to public safety, I think I've pointed out to the board that a lot of these items are planning board issues and will be taken up at the planning board. We fully expect to have to provide additional studies to those effects to ensure that public safety is met. I would just point out that this project does propose buffers along the entire front of the project site. Trees would not be removed so that any of the existing vegetation that's there that helps keep drivers, fortunately, in their lanes is proposed to remain, with the exception of each one of the driveway cuts that we're proposing. We don't intend to address the direct comments related to my company's ability or my sub-consultant's ability to do their job effectively and appropriately. But we would also point out that we work for all of the residents of the town of Barrington, all of the surrounding residents, municipalities, and conservation groups alike. So with that, our final statement is, in many ways, we have like concerns with the abutting landowners and how to best conserve the land that is appropriate to conserve, how to develop the land best that is appropriate to develop. And that's why we're here tonight requesting relief for the 626 and the requests for the special exceptions. Be happy to try and answer any questions.
Board?
Well, I have 3 questions, but they are planning board questions, so I guess I can't answer. I won't ask them.
In reference to what we're looking at and reviewing
Yeah.
tonight, that would be wise.
I think so too. I know they'll be covered later, so, but I could just sneak one in.
Go ahead and speak.
I'm
I'm
only
gonna
gonna
stop
stop one in,
you.
Mr. Barry, you know I would like to do that. My question to you was, how would the upper property be protected if this development were to be approved and go through?
Currently proposed through an easement that would be held by the landowners. One of the things that we did not point out in our presentation is the potential connectivity to the abutting lands, but it would be protected through typical easement deeds that would be reviewed by the board and council.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to ask that.
Mr. LaPrade, you have questions?
So to clarify, what is the total amount of exceptions that you are looking for?
So we're asking for 3 variances. Each one of those variances has to do the exact same issue on the site. And we are asking for 1 special exception.
And how many of the houses, just for clarification, are you looking for a buffer to be less than 100 feet? 4.
At this time, I'm going to open this, but are you comfortable, Mr. Barrett, that you presented everything thus far that you need to present?
I believe so.
Okay, we may call you back on. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for this project before I move to close that portion. Very good, please come forward. Just a quick reminder, we're talking only about the 3 variances and special exceptions, so our scope is very narrow when we're speaking of this.
I'll try my best. I've never
Okay.
done this before, so.
Go ahead.
Good evening, board members. My name is Katie Bean and I live at 112 Young Road. My house is located directly across from where the applicant is requesting a reduced buffer variance of 40 feet on the 4 lots. They're also requesting approval for 3 shared driveways in the same small section of road. I have some major concerns with these requests due to the number of accidents that have occurred in the woods of this exact section of road. First, I'd like to point out that our road is a very busy cut through to get to and from routes 9 and 125 to avoid the lights at the Caliph intersection. Secondly, it's hard to tell on the maps, but this specific section of road is a pretty substantial curve, and these 4 lots are downhill from the curve. Since we moved here, we've witnessed numerous accidents in front of our house. Some have occurred during inclement weather, but many were in warmer months when the road was dry. Most seem to be caused due to excessive speed. All of them have resulted in vehicles losing control and ending up in the woods across from us, in the exact area of the reduced buffer request. Currently, the area is wooded and trees prevent these vehicles from going too far into the woods. But I'm worried about what would happen if this area is cleared for the multiple driveways and the houses proposed. How many trees would be left to stop these vehicles from ending up in people's front yards, or worse, crashing into houses that are only 40 feet from this very dangerous curve? What if people are out in their front yards when this happens? I'm urging you to consider the repercussions of approving these requests. 14 shared driveways on a small section of a very busy, dangerous cut-through road, and especially consider the very real dangers of reducing the buffer to only 40 feet on the absolute worst section of this road, where numerous bad accidents have already occurred. There's no doubt in my mind there will be more accidents. People will continue to drive too fast. If trees are removed, vehicles will go further off the road. So where will these houses and driveways be placed in order to protect the homeowners and their families from these accidents? Please think about this when you are making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. So I maybe didn't make myself clear. Thank you for speaking. I know it's always hard to speak publicly, especially when being taped and videos. I was actually asking, is there anyone here who'd like to speak for the variance? Go ahead, please, sir. Come on up. You can state your name and their address.
My name's Luke Stillwagon. I live at 377 Beauty Hill Road in town. And I also represent the seller on the sale of the property.
Okay, thank you for disclosing.
And she lives out of state, so she also
Sure.
can't be here tonight.
Sure.
It's been brought to my attention that a community member has accused me of discussing privileged information about the current agreement during a sales call. And I can't get into specifics about the agreement that's in place, but I can say that section 4C of the letter that was passed out and put in people's mailboxes around the subject property was not accurate and seemed to be written to have a negative impact on the sale of the property.
Okay,
In closing, I just want to point out that the state of New Hampshire has around 20,000 residential units short of where we need to be
Mhm.
as a state. So that's important to point out that we're far short of demand, and it's really with the interest rate changing, it's made it a lot harder because people aren't selling their properties, they're hanging on to their current interest rate. So there's a very, it's really putting a squeeze on lower income families that are looking for housing. And I just wanted to point out that I strongly believe the right developer is getting the property and the project will have a positive impact on the community. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
You have a copy of it with that, what you talked about, section 4.
I don't have the letter on me right now.
Would you see to it that we got a copy,
we have
please?
a copy of the letter.
Do we?
Yes, we do.
All right, I didn't notice it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak for the project before I have information ready? Go ahead.
Let
So
me see if there's anybody online, and there's some people that want to speak online, but, is there anybody
For the
on,
project.
I don't know yet, they just said they would like to speak.
Yeah.
Is there anybody
I don't wanna
online
hear
who
it,
wants
but-
to for the application, in support of the application? If so, please raise your hand on the team so I can, see if I can see several people. We'll give you a moment to respond. If not, move forward with Madam Chair.
Mr. Glatt. 1 second.
Yeah, no, right.
If you move your mouse over your screen, on the right-hand side generally comes up your commands and you see what looks like a little hand. That's what you want to click on if you'd like to speak for the project. If you would like to speak in the future for the other side of this, please do that too, but don't raise your hand right now.
Madam Chair, there is a person on the line that would like to speak to support the application.
Okay, please. Yep.
If you could unmute yourself and go ahead,
What's the name?
Lynn Thibodeau.
Okay, yeah. Lynn, can you hold 1 second, please? The gentleman that just spoke, there were 2 questions for you from the ZBA.
I have a question for Mr. Barry.
Oh, I'm sorry, for Mr. Barry. Chris, could I have you please come up to the podium so Mr. Ostrod can ask that question and we can get it on video? Go ahead, sorry.
Under variance number 1, but the number 1 thing, the bottom paragraph, I just want to read that to you. The underlying purpose of this buffer is to ensure the layout of the subdivision is not generally obtrusive to the surrounding public. Sections of the ordinance discuss these vegetated buffers as a visual screen as being an underlying objective, and we submit that with the project as designed maintains enough buffer and maintains the rural feel of Young Road. And the word obtrusive, meaning noticeable and or prominent in an unwelcome way. You don't believe that with the scope of this project, that does not change the rural landscape of Young Road?
Not when you compare it to what is ultimately permitted in the underlying zone. No. This is a benefit to what would be permitted in the underlying zone. The underlying zone, it would be a 40-foot front setback, no buffer.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Summers, did you have a question for Chris?
I just wanted to know on what Ms. Bean spoke so nicely about. Roads are not something we can decide on. We can't decide on traffic, all those traffic studies and accident studies, all that will be done at the planning stages.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Okay, speaking for, and this is,
Miss Lynn Thibodeau.
okay. Miss or Ms. Thibodeau, proceed. I'm hoping we can hear you. If we can't, we may have to finagle something. You unmute her.
She has not muted, so.
Okay, you may also have to unmute your own laptop or computer.
It's like the microphone on the line.
Then again, if you move your mouse across your own screen, it should bring up controls generally on the right-hand side of this application you're using. And your microphone looks like an old-fashioned microphone with a line through it. If you unclick that, it should allow us to hear you. You can also call it. Yeah.
Master, it could be an issue where we had on the last meeting where I was in North
Yeah.
Carolina and I was attending.
You hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Please
All right.
proceed.
all right. My name is Lynn Thibodeau. I'm speaking to this. I mean, I'm just joining the meeting now. I know folks against are going to be speaking, so I'm speaking for first and kind of rebutting some of the things that were said. There's been a lot of misinformation on social media, whether intentional or maybe folks are just misinformed. There's been a lot of stuff about, if we shoot down this project, then Southeast Land Trust will come in and rescue it. I know for a fact that the seller did approach Southeast Land Trust several times, and they have no interest in purchasing this property at all. So that's not going to happen. This property was looked at by 3 different buyers. We were lucky enough to be the ones that are purchasing this. At no time did our neighbors come to us with any questions or concerns other than to post on social media or to put letters in our neighbors' mailboxes. So there's just been a lot of misinformation about what we're trying to do. I think what people need to understand is that this property is zoned for this. We are trying very hard to, with this conservation easement, to preserve buffers, to contribute, 20+ acres along Riverston Pond, the wetlands and stuff that directly borders the Pooh Trail that will allow access to the public to use more of that land and preserve the wetlands that they're so concerned about. If we do a typical subdivision, like the surveyor was saying, you only have that 40-foot buffer. If there's concern about accidents and stuff, people need to slow down. This is not a zoning question. So, and I also want to point out that I live on Young Road. I live across the street from this. This is my neighborhood. And the folks that are complaining, 10 years ago, the land that their house sits on, that they are enjoying this part of Barrington, was undeveloped land. We developed that. Now they want to deny other people who would love to live in this part of Barrington and be part of our town the opportunity to own, a piece of property on this land. I am thrilled that, and I think our neighbors would much rather have someone who lives in the neighborhood who wants to protect that land, developing this land, than somebody coming from out of state, clear cutting it, putting up a zillion houses, whatever they wanted to do, and then leaving, than having someone who loves this property, loves this neighborhood. This is my home. You are my neighbors. We want to try to do something beautiful here. And
Okay.
so that is what I want to say. So I am in support of doing this conservation easement because I think it's going to benefit the town, the people here, because it will be developed some way by someone at some point. It's not going to be magically rescued by SELT or anyone else.
Thank you. I appreciate you weighing in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of the project? Mr. Air?
Daniel A. 334 Old Concord Turnpike. As the select person, we worked with the homeowner, the chairperson did, and she gave variances, and other people gave variances in the thing to install that culvert. And I have that, the homeowner, she didn't want to work with town officials, but the chairperson was able to talk to him. She was very cooperative, and I thank her for that. And then I keep hearing about trees, trees and trees. I'm against saving all the trees, and I'm on the conservation. Is that 2 Rod Road? 50 foot? But this seems a lot narrower. And it was a 3 Rod Road, but the tree's gonna die. the salt we use and stuff, they're gonna die and stuff, and then I know with 3 trees going down Long Gulf Powers. And they're more of a safety hazard in time. If it, 'cause we try to get as wide as we could for that bridge, try to get bicycles and people walking. And I think if the applicant's willing to work with the town, get rid of some of the trees, open it up. And then what it says, I'm stating, for them trees gonna do harm in the future.
Okay,
They're not gonna last with the salt.
thank you.
Thank you.
One other person online that was speaking for, can you just read the comment?
Yes, there's someone online that, there's not a name, it just says Young Road, guest. It says in the original board meeting request, Mr. Berry was unsure how exactly these driveways could even work with these variants, but now it's a glorious idea. There's some comments in response to that, but that is not for supporting that.
Okay. What I'm going to have, we have a staff that we have all reviewed, but I'm going to have, our town planner read to you what has come into us, and then if you choose to, for your reading pleasure, they will all be posted as part of the packet as well. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. We have, the land use office has received, 11 emails not in support of the application. As, Madam Chairperson has, said that, the board has received these comments, so we're not going to be reading them all out loud. I'll just give a brief summation. With the person's name and if they're for or against, actually this is for not supportive. The application, the first one I have is from a Mr. Ken Grossman. He is not in support of the application. I don't know if you want me to summarize, it's like what he.
Bullet points, yes.
The shared drive is a reduced buffer being made in order to enable building of 23 densely spaced homes. Is proximity of delicate fine wetlands or other wetlands, streams, and open body of water. And that Goodwood Conservation Area. It does, might render some of the special exempts and unnecessary, not present, and an undue hardship to applicant. Just major points. And that was received Wednesday, January 28th, 2023 at 12:29 p.m. I have a Mr. Mark, I apologize if I say your last name wrong, Branch. I have actually 2 submittals from him. One is from today, Wednesday, January 18th, at 10:06 a.m. Is a lengthy, I don't know how much you want me to read. He did add an additional detail, but it was similar information that was submitted to the December 21st meeting.
So there was a question about the wildlife, there was a question about the protection of the water, protection.
I'm on the phone. I'm happy to speak to it. If,
Oh, good. I'm gonna have you hold out till she reads through the rest of these. You can put
Sure.
yours-
Okay. And then I have a Miss Sharice Tompkins, who is in opposition. Oops, apologize, that's from Rollerboat Road. Miss Beverly Lane, who is not in support of the ZBA allowing the variance. That's no. There's a Mr. Brad Bowick, not in support of the application. Due to the scope of development being too large, over variances to zoning buffer requirements. Not sure there's any other factors he's up to speed on, but descoping the project is a comment, concern about safety and current of future residents in Young Road for speeding, that sort of thing. Next one I have is from a Mr. Peter. And if you're here, again, I apologize if I don't say your last name right. Louis, Louisel, on 474 Beauty Hill Road. It's concern on the wetlands, the wetland crossings. like that's more of the environmental, questions that you have or concern that you have. There's a Miss Michelle Bryan, who does not support the application. She is wondering if it could be considered for purchase by SELT, safety perspective of the speed. Mr. Paul Thibodeau has excused himself from the board, but that she was wondering if there's a conflict of interest there. And when she purchased her property in 2015, she thought the land across the street was conservation lands. I also I'm gonna go through this one with the other Mr. Mark Branch that he's been. Miss Katie Theme, who we've already spoken on. Branch. To the conservation boards. Last one is Melinda Stovner. I'm not in support of the application. She's concerned about the rural character and the wildlife, and the wetlands. That is all that I.
It's very good, Julie. I'm gonna move to online first. There's a Mr. Mark, what was his last name? Branch?
BRA.
Roush.
Roush.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please do that. There's a large audience here and it's already 8:10 and we have 2 other cases to hear. So that some issues we've already heard in opposition or with concerns were traffic, planning board issue, wetlands, Department of Environmental Service issue, density issue, which is not what this board is hearing, wildlife and rural character. If you're, I know you have a very lengthy letter written, could you please focus on any other issue in opposition other than what I've just listed?
Yes, absolutely.
Proceed.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. For my first point, I would like to focus on the hardship the applicant claims. In the application for the multiple variances, he used the ability to, if he does not gain access to the quote valuable nearly 2,800 of linear foot frontage, and if that is denied, that he will incur hardship. This is simply not true. The break-even point for this type of investment that is in Exhibit 5 is estimated at around 5 houses. And there's plenty of developable land that exists for this type of scope that negates the access to the piece of land that requires the variances. So if the applicant would like to refute the nature of this break-even analysis, I would encourage him to provide actual financial figures to dispute this.
Mark, I'm going to interrupt you. The actual, one of the things that is not taken into account at the zoning board of adjustments is how much money a developer needs to make to break even. So no, I won't allow a question on that. Can you move on to another issue?
So I mean, he's making his case for quote valuable. So I would expect that his attempt at claiming any type of value or finance in regards to hardship, even though I know it's very much in
Mark,
respect to hardship of the land.
I'll interrupt you again, but the person speaking on behalf of Mr. Thibodeau, at no time did the discussion of value or costs come up.
Understood.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, we've covered the rural character of the town of Barrington, we've covered traffic, we've covered protection of wetlands, density and wildlife. Is there another, I know you had a lengthy couple of writings. Do you want to speak to any other issue?
Yeah, I don't think the validity of the surveying and the integrity of it has been fully covered. Barry Surveying Engineering is he used during his presentation earlier. If done well and done respectfully, that no issues will be incurred. But they are actually under scrutiny in Rochester,
Mark?
New Hampshire. Yes.
I'm gonna interrupt you again on that. This is not a public forum to take Barry Engineering to task on anything. They are licensed and functioning and doing multiple large projects in the Seacoast area. So that is not something the ZBA is going to take into account at this time. I would also point out to you the question, the integrity of the board unfounded as well. So it's very difficult for us to sit and take the time to hear about how you perceive the surveying company. Is there any other issue that you would like to bring forward?
So I think that, and again, I don't know if this is out of scope or not, but degradation to the land, I'm just trying to use the terminology that was in the application. I do not think diligence has been done. Especially there doesn't appear to be evidence of an aquifer assessment. And this was also conducted during a historic drought. So I don't think the conclusions they had are appropriate. And I would also like to address I guess your impression of my questions regarding the integrity of the board. My intention, while I do not doubt your intentions, I do think, given like you are all volunteers and thus you are more susceptible to conflicts. And by simply asking a series of questions to get on record, I don't think that is out of question.
Mark, any other issues that you would like to bring forward of relevance to the actual application besides the rural character, the traffic, the wetlands, the density, or wildlife?
It's the special character.
I understand.
I do not think so, no.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for taking the time to be passionate about the issue. Thank you. Anyone else online that would like to speak against the project, please mouse over. I see.
There is somebody online. Before I let her speak, I just want to put, there's other comments in here, in relation to size of lots and other things that was going on during this conversation about pricing and stuff. Just wanted to let that know.
Okay, so two people weighed in on, I'm sorry, pricing of what the houses will cost? That has nothing
Yes.
to do with zoning. Okay.
Size of lots.
Well, excuse me, this is Linda Tyring. In the presentation, he mentioned that these were going to be, and I don't know the exact wording he used, but affordable housing, or alluded to that. So that's why I'm asking that question.
So, no, there's not been a conversation about affordable housing. I think the discussion was that in the state of New Hampshire, we're short 21,000 homes, and that most homes coming forward lately are not of an affordable.
And that was a public comment.
And that was, yes. So I have another person online who'd like to speak.
Miss Lynn, and I apologize.
So there's a Lynn has her hand raised. Maybe it's name first.
That's okay. You don't have to bother with the last name.
Okay.
Okay.
I need the last name for the
So,
record.
yeah, Lynn, we need, so if your last name is not displayed, we need it for the meeting minutes. And could you please state your address? I'm sorry, I didn't do that, Mr. Marker over there.
That's okay. My name is Lynn Santosuoso.
Yes?
I live at 89 Church Street,
Okay.
and I have a couple comments. And let me start off by saying I totally appreciate what the board is doing and what your job is and what your responsibilities are. So if I go off topic, please reel me in. I have nothing derogatory against you. I'm going to start off by real quickly, I'm gonna make this as quick as possible. I started off, I was born and raised in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Since I was a kid, I wanted to live in Barrington. When my mom passed in 2007, I was able to move from taking care of her from Portsmouth and have my home in Barrington, where I always wanted to live. I am now retired. I'm 100% disabled combat veteran. I can no longer work, and I live on a fixed income. And I'm getting to the point where I can't afford to live in my home anymore. And it's because, and the developer mentioned that this project is not going to cause a diminutive issue with property, but it's going to increase property value. And that's the problem. When property value increases and my home is assessed at a higher value, I have to pay more taxes. I don't make any more money. And I think that's happening to a lot of people. And I went through this in Portsmouth. And it's not just because my mom passed that I moved out. It's because I could not afford the property taxes anymore in Portsmouth. And now Portsmouth is reproachable. You can't live there anymore unless you have close to $1 million to buy a piece of property. And I do not want to be in that situation here. I have a nice home. I'm on, granted, I'm on Church Street and the traffic is getting worse, but Barrington is getting to the point of where Portsmouth was and still is, where it's growing way too fast. It is taxing the property. It is pushing people out. And I have a concern also for my well. I'm at the top of the hill, the top of the mountain here. There is a small mountain here, if anyone knows it or not, but they are down below. You're talking 23 houses pulling water out of the aquifer. How many more houses are going to be built on this downhill stream? Also, they are on a hill going downward. There's going to be runoff into the marsh, into Richardson's Pond. I take my dog regularly walking through those trails. I mean, how much of that is going to be exposed to this eyesore? And again, the traffic is getting obnoxious around here. And some things that people with the development in Barrington that people may not be taken into consideration. The size of our police department, they're going to have to get bigger. They're going to need a new facility. Our fire department is volunteer. How far can that go before they need a full-time fire department? There are a lot of things to take into consideration, and I digress.
That's okay, Lynn. Thank you. I did get a point of order from one of the ZBA members because we do have to stay focused on the variance itself. Let me take the time to thank you for your service. And I appreciate that you took the time to voice your opinion and to provide insight. Anyone else online that needs to or would like to speak?
If anybody's online that would like to raise their hand, so we know that you would like to speak, please do so at this time.
Move your mouse over the front of your screen, right-hand side, commands should come up, could be across the bottom as well, but it would be a hand. You click on that and it will alert us. Okay,
Madam Chair, I don't see anybody online that would like to.
thank you all for hanging in there. Anyone who is here who would like to speak on this?
Actually, I would. My name is Michelle Byrne, BYRNE. I reside at 120.
I'm sorry, can you come to the?
Yeah,
Sure, so we can,
Anywhere.
that's okay.
All right, so
okay,
listen,
Hang on 1 second, I'm gonna rein you in. It was Michelle Byrne.
BYRNE, yes.
BY.
Yeah, so I'm one of the abutters.
And your address again?
120 Young Road.
120 Young Road.
So I would like to speak to Mark's one point, and thank you, Mark, for trying to communicate the facts that you built up. But we cannot discard Barry surveying and engineering. they're actually currently under scrutiny in Rochester for a similar issue involving wetlands, as cited in 8.A of Mark's document that he provided to you, not once, but twice.
Point of order.
So, ma'am, I don't know what Mark's expertise is, and I.
No, he cites the source of the article, so it's actually
So
documented.
I want to point out to you that.
Foster's Daily Democrat.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
It was actually John Hayes that did all of the review of the wetlands and the water. It had very little to do with Mr. Berry.
Okay, but this is where I question things. Conveniently, the surveying took place again, and I walk along the road every day. So we want to talk about traffic. We want to go there, how dangerous the traffic is, especially in the spring and the spring and the summer when people are going. No, it's an issue. Do not dismiss me.
No, we're not dismissing you, but we've covered rural character, we've covered wetlands, we've covered wildlife, we've covered density, and we've covered traffic. What takes place here at ZBA is not what is covered at the planning board.
This should never go to planning. That's my point.
Okay, and I respect that that's what you're sharing, but outside of those other 5 issues, do you have any new?
I question the whole level of integrity of what's going on with this proposal. It's despicable to me. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your opinion. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please come to the podium. If you could provide your name and your address.
Real quick, Keith Noseworthy, 50 Young Road. I just had a question to you guys. If you had a plan, if the Conservation Committee approved this plan? It was.
No, this goes to the planning board, not to the conservation commission.
But as far as the variances that affect the wetlands,
Actually, this variance will protect the wetlands more than a conventional subdivision. That's what he laid out for his reason to ask for the variance.
Gotcha, but there was no formal Conservation Committee.
The conservation
approval or
commission
anything?
has reviewed this and they made their comment to the planning board, and the planning board is the one that has to approve it as a subdivision. Tonight, they're just here to address the issue of, can we keep all the houses up closer to the road and give more protection to the wetland? That's
Okay.
what he's asking for.
Okay,
And that's all this board is here for tonight.
got it. And as far as, I just had 2 more quick things. Was there a traffic study completed?
That's
We
all
have
has to
to go
do with
to
the planning
planning
board
too.
and it's part of the planning board's approval.
This may be the same thing, but was there a DOT approval on the driveway permits? We
There
talked
wouldn't
about
be a
before.
DOT that
It's
town.
not state road, they're town roads.
It's not, okay.
Yes.
So with the town,
Questions, though?
The
do the towns sort of, that they approve the driveways?
No, they can't
Okay.
approve anything until the traffic study's done and all that analysis comes back.
When is that happening? Do we know?
They've done their analysis and they'll have to present it to the planning board. Then the planning board would send it out to a reviewing engineer to verify that all the stuff was done correctly.
Gotcha. So as far as the approval of the driveways, that would come from
That would come from the,
surveying?
no,
Okay,
it would come from the highway department based on criteria for
Okay.
site distance, speed of the road and all the other stuff.
It appears to me
Mhm.
that the 12, I think it was 12 houses on the other side of the road.
Mhm.
And I've been trying to count the lines. I think there's 12, between 12 and 14. I don't think there's any more on that side of the road than there is on the development that took place on the other side.
right. Was it where the place, because I had the town come out to survey a second driveway. I asked the town, if I could put a second driveway on my land. They told me I couldn't because of the sideline. But if you look at the plan, there's gonna be two or three driveways in the same spot. Where I was told I couldn't put a driveway.
To have a second driveway.
Correct.
You're on the other side of the road though, right?
I'm on 50, yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes site distance changes from one side of the road, if you're on the outside of the curve and inside of the curve. And also to have a second driveway by the town's regulation, you have to have more than 3 feet of frontage.
Yeah, well, even, I'm talking, even where it was going to be, if I did a circle or whatever he said, because of the sight and I'm on the same side of the road, the road goes up, so the sight line to the left is fine. The sight line to the other side is not, that's coming down the hill, and that's where they're putting the driveways.
But the planning board does require.
That's what they do, that?
traffic Stuff, and that's gonna be done at the planning board level, but not at this level.
And
Okay.
what we're looking at tonight is variances on the buffers.
Mhm.
And whether allowing a variance meets the 5 criteria.
Mhm.
And whether if we've read through all the applications, whether it is both in the best interest and meets the spirit of the ordinances, whether it is in the public's best interest, whether it does nothing to decrease values in the neighborhood. So those are the criteria that this board is mandated from the state to function within. And what that means is we can be very passionate about building in Barrington, and we can be very passionate about rural character. I mean, quite frankly, it'd be great if everything we put on 125 looked like a barn or something. It would be kind of beautiful, but we don't get to mandate that here. Protection of wetlands, very important. And that is what we're discussing, is whether approving a variance and a special exception for the buffers will better protect the area. Is one of the analysis points. Density would be the same. There's 65 acres, so you could carve out 32 lots with Richardson's Pond there. That would be a traditional building environment. And whether someone brought up wildlife. Someone mentioned an eagle. There's an Eagle Protection Act. You, by the way, can never remove eagles' eggs. I looked it all up. And you can't do anything to interfere with eagles living in the trees around your property. But it has nothing to do with the development. So, anything else you would like?
This last thing, as far as the lot sizes, I heard earlier it was 80,000, was it 80,000 square feet per lot?
Okay, a conventional lot is the 80,000.
Okay, yeah.
The
Conservation.
conservation, you can go smaller. So what the concept is, that yield plan they showed you is based on that 80,000. That determines how many lots they can possibly get based on a real subdivision plan, which the planning board has to approve. That's a different issue than this board.
Okay.
So what they're asking for is to be able to make all them lots smaller, cluster them down, give more protection, because they did a conventional subdivision, that setback would be 40 feet, and they could have a lawn right up to the road. This is gonna give that buffer to where there's no development, the trees are all left to try to hide the houses from the road. But yet, because of the lots being smaller, they're gonna pull them farther from the wetlands, which is gonna give more protection to the wetlands. And because those wetlands of a conservation subdivision is open space, state law makes it that once it's open space, it stays open space forever, for perpetuity. It can never be changed, never be developed. If it's part of a lot and someone wants to redevelop that lot, they can always do that in the future. This makes it so none of that area can ever be touched again.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak?
One more.
No, certainly, take your time. It's your name and your address, please.
Lauren Obrey, and I live at 488 Young Road.
488 Young
Further
Road.
down the road. Thank you guys for your service to our community. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My only concern, it has to do with just the visual as we drive down Young Road and having those houses closer. I think the whole reason why I moved out here was for the rural appeal, getting out in the roads that they built across a few years back. See how far back they are. Those are great. I mean, I don't have any problem with it. You don't really see them, but I hate the idea of just driving by and seeing house. I think that's a detriment to the way it feels for our community. I know we already brought, I'm just voicing my opinion about that part of it. And, you know, there's plenty of lots. The way they're surveyed for the other ones back there are no problem, but just those ones along the front, I think 40 feet is way too close to that road. That's all.
If they don't get this approval, they can do a conventional subdivision where they're all 40 feet. I just want to make sure you understand what they're looking at tonight for the relief. The arguments that are being made is contrary to what the application is. That's why I guess I'm not following.
Well, I guess I misunderstood that.
It's a conventional
house
subdivision,
at
they
40.
can do it. They can put all the houses at 40 feet and they can put a lawn right up to the road. They're proposing to do a buffer with trees protecting it so you can't see the houses for 100 feet back. So they're proposing to hide the houses more than a conventional subdivision. And they're also proposing, because they can get smaller lots, give them more protection to the wetlands.
And reduce number of driveways, reducing the traffic coming, or points in the traffic looking out to the road. So I think it's confusing, and I think that it's great that so many people are so passionate about this town that they've come out to speak on this issue. It makes me happy that people have strong opinions.
And the last point, I mean, telling people to slow down is not a solution. That's not gonna happen. So,
Fact.
Is
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
There is somebody online too, but
Please come forward.
there's somebody online. We see that your hand is raised.
Yeah.
Linda,
Hi.
We have a, you have somebody here coming to the podium.
Could you hold for just 1 second?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Linda. Before you speak, I just want to reiterate, we have discussed the rural character, the traffic, the wetlands, the density, the wildlife, and many other issues that probably shouldn't have been discussed, but we've discussed many. So please, if you're going to speak, present something new in reference to the request for the variance and special exception.
I'll do my best and it'll be brief. I'm Linda Tiring at 462 Young Road, down by the Aubreys. And my property borders Freeman's Cove, and I also have property on Swains Lake across the street. My question is, will these parcels be considered waterfront?
No, they don't have any waterfront.
Well, they have water in the back.
Not on the lake. You're talking on the lake, right?
No, on any body of water, because I'm on the cove and that's considered waterfront.
So I don't know that that's relevant to the ZBA variance and special exception, but I think our land use people could get back to you if you would like
If he
to
put his
give
plan
them a
back
call.
up, you could see it, because I think the conservation subdivision took it all away from that ponded area. Where if they did a conventional subdivision, then they would own part of that water area.
Right.
So right now, if this is granted, they would have no frontage on the water. If it's not granted, they would, as a conventional subdivision.
Yeah. So I would encourage you to contact land use tomorrow. They're closed Friday, but they're open tomorrow. They can give you more detailed information on that.
Thank you.
But it's not part of what we would weigh in on in our decision making. Go ahead, please, sir. Name and address.
Bob Caverly, 150 Young Road.
I missed your last name, Bob.
Bob Caverly. Not everybody on the road has been there for less than 10 years. I got generations, a few people here that have generations that are on that road. But I'm gonna keep this as close to the point as I can.
Yeah.
I want to start off with a couple questions just so I can better understand stuff.
Okay.
What,
Public comment is for you to tell us why you're in opposition to
Okay.
something, not really. I mean, we've
All
lot
right, all right.
of leeway here.
Yep,
tonight.
so hardship. I know that financial reasons were brought up and that was shot down because that's not what we're here about. But is a hardship not put forth here to
So,
get these variances on
Quite
for
frankly, I don't
financial
know if
reasons?
the ZBA has ever thought to themselves, hey, how does somebody make money from this? So no, it's not something that's considered.
So,
More towards the hardship of, will it be impacting the land in a negative way to have a traditional
Okay,
house layout around the entire property?
okay, I guess like I'm learning here as well as a lot of other people, so what, I wasn't sure what a hardship meant. So my concern, or not concern, but point to make is that this is for impact on the environment, impact on the surrounding area. It would be a less impact to the environment and the surrounding area if there was less houses put on that property. Can we all agree on that?
So, but if it goes traditional, there'll be more houses placed in the
Same
area. Right.
number of houses.
Oh, same.
Right, that's a planning board decision. It has nothing to do with this board.
Right, but
This board has no authority to regulate the number of houses in this area.
I know, but
Okay.
we can stick to all the rules and regulations under a conservation development and put houses in there without having to get any variances.
Could that happen? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Yeah, but then the house would be built back more towards the wetlands and they would all be closer to the road. So the road now, instead of having a 100-foot buffer going back, the houses would all sit 40 feet from the road. They have a crossing in the wetlands going to the back, and every single one of them lots would have impact and all that wetland area. It'd be part of their lot and it wouldn't be protected forever with a conservation subdivision open space. So the detriment to that land would be worse if they didn't.
so I guess what I'm having a hard time understanding is we're making a conservation development here. And we're putting 23 houses in, and what, 4 of them, I believe, were requiring variances?
Yeah, 12, 13, 14, and 15 need additional buffer variances. You're
Right, so could
Yes.
we not eliminate those 4 houses or maybe make those 4 lots into 2 lots and eliminate the need for a variance and still maintain, everybody stays within the rules.
Sir, we cannot make that determination. That determination, sir, has to be made with the planning board, if that's what the planning board does. We cannot do that here.
But you're here to approve the zoning, right?
So we're here to provide a variance from the current zoning ordinances.
Right. So you're approving the
If
variance from,
We approve a variance and a special exception to.
right,
the
so
Current.
I guess what I'm getting at
Our
is,
power stops there, then the project goes to planning and planning.
I think I understand where he's coming from. I think what he's asking, because he's asking for 3 variances, he has no problem with 2 of them. He has the one problem with the lots that are 40 feet.
I have problems with all of them, but I mean, like,
No, I guess that's what.
but
We're laughing because it's late, not because.
hey, when I built my house, I started presenting at 11:30 at night, so
Okay, we won't
I've
be
been-
doing that tonight. They're part of our bylaws, say if we don't get to the other cases by 9:30, we can choose to, schedule another meeting, so, okay.
Alright, so my point is, there could be less houses put on this piece of property under a conservation development and stay within the rules. There's no need for variances. There is no need for variances.
There, it would still require variances.
Because that buffer in the front is required, and if he uses any of the road front lots, he would need the variance.
That is.
In order to have this. Road front lot.
Yeah.
So and if you say you can have no road front lots, you just do the conventional subdivision, because the road front lots are there and they're allowed.
Now, is the intent of this land, well, it says right there, open space right there. One of the appeals coming from Barry Surveying in the presentation was to benefit the public and allow the public to use that land.
Actually, so what was stated is access to the south property is being built into the design along the right side.
So, okay, and that does not include this open space?
Well, you walk back, swing over, and you're right there to the open space, which will be conservation.
Right, so part of the appeal is to have this open space be for the public, right?
But that's my understanding.
Right.
I'm not sure that was presented, but that would be something at the planning board. That wasn't presented tonight.
So.
Well, that was one of the things that was brought up in his speech.
So the select board and the conservation committee look at all land placed in conservation and then decide how to handle it. This board does not make that decision.
What he did speak on was public benefit, and anytime you can serve a wetland and any additional conservation efforts made to protect that wetland are definitely in the public's best interest, so that's why.
Right, yeah, he brought public benefit, and part of this open space is public benefit, right? And that's the appeal of this to everybody, right?
Didn't say public access. There's 2 different
Yeah.
things. You're saying
Well,
public
no.
access, that's not what he said.
Actually, so Barry Engineering indicated that built into the plan on the
On the right
right-hand
side.
perimeter of this 65 acres is the access connecting to, could you tell us again, Mr. Barry? Connecting to the south property? Or the Winnie the Pooh trail? You mentioned one of them.
So what I stated is that there's currently a trail from.
Yes,
To the land that's concerned.
yes.
We intentionally designed this subdivision to keep that area open and free of lots,
Very good,
so that nobody has the right to place a house in the middle of that trail.
very good. Thank you.
And will that open space land be for the public also, or?
Again, select board and conservation commission decide how to adopt those lands and how they'll be used. This board doesn't.
All right, okay. Yeah, I guess just closing out, I think we can do a better job and put houses on this road. I'm under no delusions that there's not gonna be houses here. There's gonna be houses here. I just think we can do it within the rules that are currently in place. Thank you.
Excuse me, may I make a recommendation, sir, Bob? I would like to recommend that you, track this if it gets approved. Track it and go to the, planning board, meeting, and that way there you'll have, more of a substantial, voice.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else that would like to speak? I'm gonna close public, I'm gonna close public comment on case number 240-8-GR-22-3. VAR slash special exception. At this time, does the board have any additional questions of Berry Engineering or you're representing Norma Beard?
Okay, my questions are not changed again. I'd have to go to the planning board.
Based on the facts that you've heard tonight, is there anyone that would like to make a motion, or do you require additional information?
Are we gonna do all the variances at once or 1, 2, and 3 separately?
Based on the project, so you have 3 variances and a special exception. Would the board entertain the 3 variances since the criteria for the 3 was the same? Would the board be willing to put forth a motion based on 3 variances and 1 special exception separately? Okay, is there,
Madam Chair, I think it's proper that each variance be voted on.
you would like each one?
I think it's almost required.
Okay.
How statutory.
We will be listing the same information for all of them, so, ready, right?
On page 3 of 15, Madam Chair, variance number 1,
Yes,
I would like to.
I'd like to make a motion in reference to Article 6, Section 6.2.
Proposed 14 driveways for access to post lots through the buffer unit zone on page 3, 15, dated November 28, 2022. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
And your motion is to approve based on? So right now, we're talking about the front buffer variance.
Allow the driveways to.
Approve the variance to allow the proposed 14 driveways to access proposed lots through the buffer along the end road.
I'll second that.
So I have a first and a second. In reference to that, is that because all 5 criteria have been met?
My opinion, all 5 criteria have been met, and there is nothing there as to what was presented and what was in writing. It shows to be a detriment.
So approving the driveways would mean
It's a-
that special conditions exist on the property,
Right,
that granting the variances within the spirit of the ordinance, that granting the variance does not diminish surrounding property values, that granting the variance would do substantial justice, and that granting the variance is not contrary to the public interest.
right, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I have a first by Vice Chair Bailey and a second by Mrs. Huckins. Could I have a roll call vote, please? I'll start with Vice Chair Bailey, please.
Mr. Bailey votes yes.
Mrs. Huckins,
I vote yes, and I'd like to say why.
please.
Because I believe that this overall is good for the town. I like the fact that we are connecting 2 conservation easements. I believe that the 100-foot buffer in the front is, I think it's wonderful. To me, the alternative.
Having the larger
Yes,
buffer on the backside.
makes more sense. So I think all in all, this is a very positive. And I think they use the land, which is an odd shape. I think they've used it the best way possible to provide the most public benefit they can.
Okay, Mr. LaPro?
Yes.
And I as well am going to vote yes on that first variance for the front buffer, allowing it. It seems to me that the number of driveways being allowed in that space are exactly the same that were allowed on the other side of the roadway. So I would vote in favor of that. In reference to the second variance, is there anyone that would like to bring a motion forward?
I'd like to make a motion that we grant that.
That's the additional buffer to lots 12, 13, 14, 15.
Well, actually, it's actually a reduced buffer.
It's, yes, I'm
Sorry,
sorry. I said it backwards. So, to move that from 100 to 40. Okay. And your reasons are?
Because as Mr. Barry stated, there's steep slopes
Okay,
in the back, and that's understandable, and we've granted variances due to that
Okay.
many times.
so granting the variance because there's special exceptions to the property, because it is consistent with the spirit of the ordinance or conservation subdivision, because it does not diminish the surrounding property values, because it would do substantial justice, and because it is not contrary to the public interest. Vice Chair Bailey, how would you vote?
I
Oh, I'm sorry, you made a motion. Do I have a second?
second.
Okay, so I have a second by Vice Chair Bailey. How would you vote on that?
I want it to be clearly known that the reason why I second this and the reason why I'm voting the way I do is because of the alternative that the applicant has. The applicant has an alternative that would definitely, in my opinion, infringe on the wetlands that's above the houses on the top here. Shown on Mr. Berry's map of oh, come on, give me it right. Anyways, on the for lot to 248. Also, it protects more of what we're trying to protect.
It's a lot further from the
That's
wetlands.
right. Really,
Bailey votes aye. Mrs. Huckins.
Aye.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Before I vote on this, I just want to say that,
Everything that happens in the back of this room gets picked up, and then when we try and type meeting minutes, it's very difficult to hear. So if anyone wants to step into the hallway to have a conversation, please do. Go ahead, Mr. LeBlanc.
yeah, I just want to say that, I understand the heartfelt, feelings that you've expressed tonight. Unfortunately, a lot of them use those moving forward. I know, I understand how you feel. That woman who was on the phone about the taxes, I certainly can relate to that and, but unfortunately, you have to separate the emotion from the fact of what we're discussing here. And, everything has been met with this particular issue, so I have to vote aye on them.
Okay. In reference to those, 4 lots, I would also vote aye. I think that I am most in favor of a conservation subdivision versus a traditional subdivision. I have a very strong perception of what happens with impermeable surfaces and the impact that it has on wetlands, and I'm actually much happier that the land is being conserved to the back part of 65 acres. The third is a variance of allowing the physical lots and portions of the buffer. Is there anyone that would like to make a motion in reference to that variance?
I'll motion that we grant that variance.
Okay, physical lots within.
I'd like to read that.
Go ahead.
I'd like to read the motion of variance of Article 6.2.6 permanent buffers to allow the front buffers to contain individual house lots, whereas the lots are proposed to be frontage lots and are inherently included in the buffer. And again, I will go on the same. You were gonna ask me if I could vote, right, Madam Chair?
No, I was gonna say, are you, so,
I am seconding that.
okay, so we have a first and a second, and now I will say Vice Chairperson Bailey, how do you vote?
I vote yes for the same reasons, because we are protecting more property than we allow in the developer to dig up. I know it sounds kind of foolish or radical, but we still maintain a frontage on the road that will turn around and give us not everything we want with the appeal of country, but the appeal will be there to at least I figure a 90% stand. That's why I vote yes.
Okay.
So the land will, there'll be a buffer, it just will be owned.
Yep, Mr. LaFosse. And I would vote yes as well. I'm much happier to see again conservation of the wetlands areas. And now we are on to special exception. Special exception to Article 4, Section 1.2. Do I have a motion in reference to shared access points for the driveways?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second,
I have a second by Mrs. Puckett. Mr. Bailey, your vote, please.
Reason I have to give a reason for it, it allows less of a area for individual points to come onto the road where it makes it it combines the points to the road. I vote yes.
Ms. Puckett?
me as well, for the same reason
And Mr.
Yeah.
Three yeses. I would also vote yes. I do not see a detriment to property values by allowing the special exception. I do not see a hazard caused by it. Actually, I see a hazard decreased by it by combining the driveways. I do not believe that the driveways will cause substantial traffic congestion. I do admit we all drive a little crazy in this town, and I myself could do a better job of that. I do not believe that it will add a demand on municipal services. And I do not believe that I do not believe it will cause degradation of the existing surface and groundwater or the normal functions of the wetlands. What I believe is that it's by allowing this special exception that we are better protecting what could be happening on the 65 acres. And I will tell the public, I live in an adjacent neighborhood to this area, and so I am as affected as the majority of people that are speaking tonight. And I appreciate that there will be a large amount of conserved land on this property surrounding this water.
Thank you for everybody's consideration.
At this time, I'm going to close the public hearing on case 240-8-GR-22-3 variance and special exception. And I apologize for the other people that we are hearing from tonight. I'm going to do our best to move through cases. Next up is for owner Tyler Rand, case 251-9-GR-25- variance. Thank you for your patience. Oh, I'm sorry, and our CBA member, Mr. Paul is not recusing himself from the rest of the cases for the night, I do not think. Oh, you are, you have another one? Okay, on this particular case, he is not recusing himself, okay, very good to know, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna read this to you first.
You ready, ma'am?
Yeah, I am. When you get to, I just want to be very, very clear, when you get to your justification for the variance request, please make sure that you're stating your 5 criteria. But go ahead, please.
Very good.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
You get second.
Yep. Can I ask? Oh, sorry, we've got a bio break. Does anyone else need some time? Sorry, sir.
Yeah, no problem.
Didn't realize we lost someone. Yeah, I'm okay.
Anybody else?
Anybody want water?
I can make your coffee.
Thibodeau, you want water?
Okay, I'm gonna do a bio and a
Okay, we're gonna-
cafeteria break.
Anybody-
Give us 2 minutes.
Anybody that is online, we're taking a brief break.
Nara.
Case 251-9-GR-23- variance. Owner Tyler Rand, please present. Sorry to keep you waiting.
Thank you. Thank you, board. My name is Tyler Rand, with Katie Rand, about 132 Ham Road here in Barrington. Quick prepared statement I handed out to each of you. Katie and I have been proud to restore our circa 1791 barn at 130 Ham Road. Having people continue to enjoy the barn is a dream that is at our fingertips. We live it each day. While it is not for everyone, for us, it is a vast space in simplicity and of a historic era that helps put some perspective into our busy lives. At times, the barn has helped bring people and Barrington community together. It is our desire to be part of that community, and we feel that we have proven it as time and time again. It is our desire to be one with Barrington and to give to others what we have, for our community to experience the joy of the barn and to see and live a small part of their lives in a piece of Barrington history. There are not many places where this can happen, and the history that barns can bring is slowly diminishing. For the past 15 years of ownership, it has been a priority not only to share the property with our friends, neighbors, family, and community, but also to give to those in need. The barn has helped us do so. Moonshine Barn provided a solemn space for a Barrington teacher to marry her terminally ill fiance, and has been a meeting space for the local Boy Scout chapters and church gatherings. Big Brothers Big Sisters of New Hampshire and food drives have been other examples of statewide charities who have used the barn. Moonshine Barn has even touched national organizations, hosting meet and greets with families who've escaped Afghanistan and have united them with local organizations to help house them during the excruciating wars they've experienced. We do not know what the future holds for Moonshine Barn or for us. Tomorrow is a mystery, as they say. We want to be optimistic and to say it will be all right. The barn has more work to do on it to make it weather tight and finish what we have so greatly wished to accomplish. Good things take time is a common saying that my dad and applies in this situation. With this said, we want to withdraw our application for the variance in Article 19, Table 1, and to allow for mixed use of our property on Ham Road. We will not be going to the planning board for the conference center. We desire to maintain relations with our neighbors and to be good stewards to the road and to the town. Our business plan changed dramatically from our initial submitted plans with hope that we could replenish funds needed to keep the renovations in motion. Despite that, we do not believe that we can be both successful with both a business as a neighbor. With this no-win situation does not promote the barn like we wish. We'd like to thank John, Jamie, Vanessa, Barbara, and the town office for all the hard work and support they've provided, and thank the zoning board for your time.
So you do not want to carry your case forward?
No.
Okay, is it possible for us to make a motion to return all but the matters?
I'm sure you can. I can ask Olivia opinion on that.
Well, let's explore that. I'm sorry to hear that, you guys.
And just so that if it is legal to do so, I think if you vote that you want to return those funds.
Let's do that. I'd
do
make a
that,
motion
and
that
if
if
we
it
can
is,
do it, then we can.
Very good.
If we can't, we then.
So move.
I would make a motion. I have a second by Vice Chair Bailey.
Yep.
All those in favor, if it is possible to return the 2 fees, not the mailing.
Aye.
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 Thank you. We'll try.
Sorry to hear that.
I'm sorry.
Wish you had a good everything else you do. Sorry, and I'm sorry for the wait you have. And I.
Yeah, sure.
That one, I would have just sent it back. That wouldn't have
Hopefully carry it out.
I think in order for him to
That
do.
was something, all this other stuff.
Well, he also worked with the repair relationships and I get involved in recommendations.
I mean, I just.
Okay.
Vanessa, you ever talk to this letter for file?
The one that he just submitted,
Yes.
yes.
Next up, I have case number 23935-B-23 variance, a small Gupto.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I actually recuse myself from this case.
okay. Thank you. Thank you for your integrity in recusing yourself. One second, but
Yes, ma'am.
I need to see. Variance, can you show me variance from which articles? Thank you about that. Okay. This is a variance in reference to zoning ordinance 6.2.6 perimeter buffer, another perimeter buffer. Project name Bending Brook Residential Development, Malago Road. Please.
Evening, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Scott Pope from Beals Associates, Senior Project Manager.
From where?
Beals Associates in Stratham.
Very good, thank you.
Good. Here with me is Joseph Falzone, the developer of the property. Joseph and I have worked on multiple projects in town to include Village Place and the Ridge at Green Hill, right behind us where this property came from. Joe is now looking to develop a piece of property in town on Malago Road, historically known as the Gupto Gravel Pit. We are currently in front of the board, doing our due diligence, trying to get that job approved. And we have come upon an issue that results us in being here this evening. As the portion of the design aspects go, I have electronic copies with me, but I think, Vanessa, if you wouldn't mind, there's only two plans. If you could please pull up the yield plan. In the course of design for this property for a residential development, our first task of order was to complete a yield plan to tell us how many lots could be viable on the property. We have done so, and on the first plan, which is considered our yield plan, we have developed approximately 18 developable conventional units or lots. Joe historically would like to do open space subdivisions as he sees great value on those in providing open space for the town and its occupants. I'll just go forward to the second plan. We have done an open space subdivision. You can bring up surely that's shown here and hopefully in the green, which consists of a conservation subdivision and 2 conventional lots. The reason why we're doing that is we have 18 conventional lots on the yield plan. In order to make it a viable project, obviously, Joe, would need to come close to that amount in lot density. Per subdivision and other regulations, you are only allowed to go so far with a road length. So we have provided meeting the zoning and subdivision regulations, which gave us 15 lots. We are left with a very large piece of property, and the proposal is to do 2 conventional lots on the front right-hand corner. So these would be in kind with the current stock, as the existing lots all around Malgro are considered conventional lots. It was brought to our attention, Article 6.2.6 requires that the perimeter of the parent parcel and its connectivity has to have a 100-foot buffer around the entire perimeter. This obviously kind of limits the amount a developer can do meeting those criteria. So for the open space subdivision here, it's certainly beneficial. We have found in working with the town manager, and Concom to do an open space subdivision, which brings us here to try and ask for a variance for just the location of the 2 conventional lots up front. Now, we would still be providing a 100-foot setback from those 2. So in essence, the cluster subdivision will still have a 100-foot perimeter buffer around it. But based on the language of 6.2.6, we have to get an allowance to have those lots there. Now, we can go through that criteria, but briefly, I know we have some items behind us. Some of the benefits of this one, which are not the norm, Joe has agreed to actually deed or donate the open space to the town. Joe was approached by the town. There are some drainage issues that everybody is aware of on Malibu Road. They said, Joe, would you please help us out? So in doing the open space subdivision that provides area for the town to actually put drainage services on the lot, to obviously help for the situation on Malibu Road. It provides open space. The Concom likes this much better than the conventional lot where it would be all divided up in a normal course and there would not be open space, especially with the Malibu Brook behind this. It's a sensitive and very high valued area. So in a sense, that's why we're here this evening. I can go into further details if you wish. And in essence, to save time, that's where we're at right now.
So the variance is actually not for the subdivision. You've already met that variance. It's for the two lots.
35, 16, and 17.
That's correct. He doesn't want to do the buffer around the conventional lots.
Okay.
But there would be a buffer from the rest of the subdivision to everything, including those two new lots.
Yeah, the verbiage being parent parcel technically doesn't allow us to do the two conventional lots.
And you do know that the town, not the ZBA, has to accept and adopt the open space.
We do.
Okay.
We do.
So we're not speaking to that at all tonight.
Right.
There is a snowmobile trail running through 3516 that connects the town's snowmobile trails. Can you speak to that at all?
I can quickly.
Good, you got, I know that's not ZBA, but I also know people that are listening that are avid snowmobilers, and
Yeah.
given the rural character of this town, that really matters to a lot of people.
Yep.
Yes, it does.
So where we are currently, there's a main snowmobile corridor. And I've lived here most of my life, so I've actually been on those in my younger years as well. On the left-hand side of the plan, a little bit further down from where the proposed road would come in.
It's up on the screen if you want to go over and punch them, see it.
Sure.
That's the proposed.
Tell them how we changed
So
it.
currently there's an existing snowmobile trail that accesses Malibu Road right here.
Yeah.
Which is actually on a Malibu lot, not part of this project.
Mm-hmm,
It actually goes through the old pit area,
mm-hmm,
down to the lighter brown and then off, I
mm-hmm.
believe, to other, that's the main corridor where it goes, I believe, to the gas station in Route 125.
Yeah, people come off of Pasture Hill right along, they'll go across.
There's also an existing stub trail that goes from the right-hand side and actually comes up through lot 16 and then goes over to the toys area and the microbrew over there.
Yep.
That is a stub dead end trail, and talking with Josh St. Hilaire. The gentleman at the toy store is a groomer for the Snowmobile Club.
Mm-hmm.
So he accesses that and people go to the restaurant there, but it doesn't lead anywhere else. It's a dead end.
Club trail.
Club trail. So Joe has, I guess, volunteered, yes, to continue the trail in its use. We do realize that a lot of people do use it. It's very important to the town. So we are relocating the trail through the parent parcel. Currently, there's been some, no matter where we put it, of course, either the abutters may not like it, the realtors may not like it, so we're still kind of in that gray area of where it's really gonna be. But at this point, we're gonna propose it down Malibu Road a short distance, down the green strip, which is actually owned by the pit. There's a 25-foot or 50-foot strip there.
Mm-hmm.
It'll go down there and then basically make its way to the existing trail as it is today.
Thank you.
Is it appropriate to ask a quick question just while he's on that topic?
Just so you know, this has nothing to do with ZBA.
Oh, I know.
But please go ahead, because clearly it's important to a lot of people. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
where in relation are you planning to put that trail out to Turtle Pond Road? Because that's what we would go to. That's where the trail actually goes down to get to Cozy's Pizza and.
Avenue Road, right now, the contemplation with that short section would be discontinued. So the main corridor would stay and that section there at this point in time would be away.
Okay, so you're talking about eliminating access to Commerce Way.
Yes.
Which Josh reviewed,
Okay,
the president of the association.
but he's not the president, he's the vice president.
That's true. So we've just been trying to relay with, we're trying to do as much as we can, but unfortunately we can't say everything.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, thank you for considering that. Okay. Interesting. Any other questions from the board?
I forgot what district that was in.
Village District.
Pardon?
Village District is the zone.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I have a question. It's probably a stupid question. I'm tired and it's late. Is there any reason why you didn't just subdivide those two conventional lots off of the property?
That's actually a very good question. The reason for that is on the first plan, your conventional yield plan, that area has to be compromised or the whole area has to be comprised of your open space plan. If we subdivided those two lots off like we normally would and did that separately, technically the yield plan wouldn't work. Then we'd be faced with a whole different scenario of what's left, what can go, a big loop road, and it wound up being a kind of a headache. That's why we're here. So.
A big loop road, and you'd use up more of the property and have less of
Correct.
the open space.
Way more impervious surface and, you know.
Okay.
And we had a site walk with both the Concom and the planning board, and they prefer the open space plan.
Okay.
You can see on this one, more than 60% of it becomes open space.
I was looking at that.
24 acres, 25 acres becomes open space.
And that would abut, you have the brook in between, but there's also open space on the other side, I believe from the Red Box Lane. It would tie into making an even bigger portion of open space.
Where would access be from on that, sir?
Excuse me?
Where would you consider the major access point to that open space?
Well, actually, a little off topic, but up there in the beginning of where the proposed road would be to the left, is an existing gravel pit road.
Yep.
That's gonna remain. The plan board has asked us to supply an additional parking area, which we have proposed, so there'll be 8 to 10 parking spaces.
Very good.
So people can actually walk down the existing gravel pit road as it is today and then access the open space.
Thank you for taking that time. I
It was actually brought up at the meeting, people fish Malago Brook, and I never knew that.
Somebody said, I still think they're talking maybe downstream, not in this area.
I know.
I never know.
I looked at it, it's like, I still don't get it either, but that's what we brought up.
I don't think we get any crawfish up there.
But the public, but they are finding public access to it.
This is at the end of Pasture Hill. If you cross over the snowmobile bridge that's there and look down, there's fish galore in there.
Really?
Yes. I mean, I don't know what kind of fish they are, because I don't fish, but there's fish galore there. Okay. Any other questions? Concerns, issues, thoughts, emotion, anyone?
There's some abutters here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Anything else that you'd like to tell us before we open up public hearing?
No, ma'am, like I said, I can go in more detail, but I think that's the gist of it.
Anyone online that would like to speak for the project? You'll mouse over the front screen in the right-hand corner at the bottom of here, depending upon how you configured your computer. There's a little hand, you click on it, it tells us you'd like to speak. I don't see any hands. Okay, you have something.
Because we have another,
Yes,
another case,
yes,
you can make sure that they stay into the concept of the variance for
Yes.
buffer and not just for
Absolutely.
the project as a whole.
go ahead.
I just find that
For again.
this is an opposition of the application.
I'm gonna move to that. Okay,
When you do that.
okay, go ahead.
So this, was forwarded to the board. You probably didn't get it because it was sent today at 6:03. I do have copies for the board. It's opposition to the, application. They
just don't want.
You're not a direct about it.
so it's text more of that.
They don't want any.
There's not really any, like, there's not traffic concerns. They're concerned more about, school district.
Doesn't apply to
Population growth.
Yeah, so
I just want.
Again, I
We share
want to
this.
reiterate to our townspeople, none of our land use boards are operating in order to, stop people from using their land. That's not what we are charged with doing. And if we did try and stop people from using their land, they'd just be suing the town and using up a whole bunch of money that you pay in tax dollars, because
They'd win.
when you own a piece of property, just like all of us that vote in this town do, you have the right to use your property, and that's true of developers and individual homeowners and businesses, and it's unfortunate, and it's likely not going to stop. Barrington is one of the most open-spaced municipalities in the Seacoast area. And unfortunately, we all moved here because we loved how rural it is, and the zoning ordinances are trying its best to keep it as rural as possible, as much open space as possible. But it is one of the few municipalities that still has land. And that's what makes it such a difficult thing, is in the 23 years that I've been here, it's developed. And I think often our residents they misunderstand what land use boards are for. It is not to stop the growth of the town of Barrington. It is not what we're charged with, and it is not what the state allows us to do.
And if I could also add, conservation subdivision adds to that open space, which continues to make that town stay more rural, Bill.
We are a town with 47% open land or water, and we will always have that. And we are continuing to grow what is conserved and more open space, so. Yes, sir.
The only other thing too is that the federal government has just labeled us as a community where the average household income is 94,000 plus a year.
Really?
Oh, yeah, that's what I say, really.
Well,
Thank you.
well, and it's a very educated town, and it's a very community-based town, which is amazing. Any other people that would like to speak in reference to the variance, please come up, give us your name and your address, and feel comfortable sharing your thoughts.
My name is Rick Webb. I live at 265 Malago.
Okay.
And I want to speak in support of this project for a number of reasons, not one of which has already been alluded to. This particular layout allows for more conservation land to be used and to be utilized by the public. I know there's some questions about the accesses and this, that, and the other, but it looks to me like the engineers have dealt with those issues so that people can get down and utilize the snowmobile trail, as well as parking to go do their fishing or whatever. But this project allows for new houses. I live in a home with I live in a home with my daughter and son-in-law and 2 grandkids. I've got another son. I don't want to live with all of us. So we would like for the opportunity for them to build close to where we live, and this would allow them to have that option.
Interesting. Very good. Thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to speak? Please, name and address, sir.
Ryan Smead, 92 Swain Road. I haven't dealt with these gentlemen, but people from our club have, and our club is 50 years old this year. So it's a long-standing part of the community. These guys have pledged to work with us and keep the trail, reroute it. So I just want to express some appreciation from the snowgoers to the owner of the property and the developer, and the consideration of keeping something that's been a long-standing part of the community.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak? For, against? Okay, I am going to close public comment then. Closing public comment on case 23935-V-23- variance. Would anyone like to make a motion in reference to the request to allow a change to the perimeter buffer under 6.2 I'm sorry, 6.2.6 for the two lots that are adjacent to Malago Road.
I'll make a motion that we grant the request.
Okay,
I second. Second.
a second by Mr. LaPointe. And that is,
Has it met all the requirements of the variance?
it has met that liberal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship in reference to a conservation subdivision. The granting the variance would be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance as it was originally written. That granting the variance will not diminish the surrounding property values. That granting the variance would do substantial justice. That granting the variance would not be contrary to public interest. Roll call vote, beginning with Vice Chair Bailey.
Yes, I will turn around and vote in favor it, and I also will come right back down to the same issue. I really like the project, but most of all in the project, you've worked with the snowers, but you've also turned around, put some, what else you gonna call?
Snow blowers, yeah.
But you're gonna turn around and, have the other land in it for conservation. I like that. Thank you. Bailey, eyes.
Cheryl, I for the same reason.
Yes.
And I would vote in favor of it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next up. Case number 124-10-DR-23, variance, owner. Fire motion, I got that right? Okay. 507 McDaniel Shore Drive, please come and present.
Good evening. This is Megan Yulin from Revision Energy here to present with Mr. Mosher as well, and I'm remote this evening. So we are here tonight because Bayard initially received a variance approval in 2020 to construct a pole-mounted solar array on his property. He has been proceeding with a new construction home there that has encountered several delays over the past years and during the pandemic. The home is designed to accommodate clean energy and specifically this solar array to power the home's electricity needs. Due to the small size of the lot, there is limited space to accommodate the solar array. As we initially presented back a couple of years ago, the site was thoroughly reviewed for how we could best incorporate solar with minimal disturbance, and it was determined that this area of the lot on the side of the house between the home and the road was the best place to accommodate the array, and that in order to do so, Mr. Mosher has constructed a retaining wall due to the grade on the property that was needed to accommodate the base of the pole mount. The as-built conditions of that retaining wall led us, when we arrived on site to construct the solar array, it was determined that that retaining wall, it was in a different location than initially anticipated, which has meant that we need to revisit the placement of the array in that corner of the lot. In order to not damage the retaining wall, the base, basically we need to excavate a hole and set a concrete base for the pole of the solar array. And we need like 8 to 10 feet of clearance from the edge of the retaining wall to ensure that the integrity of that is preserved. This means that our base is now 14 feet from the property line setback, which results in the array edge being 3.3 feet from the front property line setback. We believe that the justifications for the variance will all be met. This is clean solar energy. It's a project that was previously approved, and it is the only opportunity for Mr. Mosher to continue with the project, which he has put substantial investment into already. And that is what I have for the presentation. I welcome any questions.
Can you, is it the stake that's in the ground with the little red flag on it, that's where you're proposing the, I'm trying to.
It's kind of hard and show the setback. This was actually previously granted a variance for. And when this happened, they come to me about this solar thing, and because the location changed, they had to come back to you.
Okay. And it's towards, the solar arrays towards the front of the road, so it's not towards the actual lake.
Correct, yes.
Okay, I was curious.
Now
I
further
mean,
from the lake.
I'm embarrassed to tell you I don't know much about solar, but I was thinking if reflection heats the actual water around the front of the lake property, but what do I know about? Okay.
No worries. They shouldn't be concerned with glare or reflection. The
Yes.
panels do have an anti-reflective coating.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Learning something.
We have a letter.
Okay,
About the speaking to you.
yeah, it's right here.
Mr. Moden's right here too.
Yeah.
The applicant.
I was told that the applicant was going to be, talking, so no, I did not have a letter.
Well, Mr. Moden's here. So he's
Yeah.
authorized.
State that Revision Energy has the right to speak on your behalf in reference
do.
to your variance. Very
Thank
good.
you very much.
The other thing, and, at the beginning of this meeting, oh, there's 5 of us now, sorry, forget that. Would anyone like to make a motion in reference to re-granting a variance that was previously granted?
With the new location.
What would they do?
Well, actually, this is a whole new variance, right?
Oh,
It's a whole new
okay.
variant. You have to do public comment.
Oh, would anyone like to speak in support of or against the solar array placement? Would anyone online like to speak?
There you go. I don't.
Anybody raising their hand? Very good. Okay, I'm gonna close public comment and ask if anyone has a motion on placement of solar panel allowing variance.
I'd love to make a motion to approve
Okay,
the new location. The reason is, I don't think anybody should be excluded from solar energy if it's available to them. So for that reason, and any more you want.
so that literal enforcement would result in unnecessary hardship to the applicant.
That one.
Okay, that granting the variance is within the spirit of the ordinance, that granting the
True.
variance would not diminish surrounding property values, that it would do substantial justice, and that it is not contrary to public interest.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Seconded, I second it also on the same theme of converting sun into usable energy.
It's very exciting. Yeah. Could I get a vote, please, beginning with Vice Chair Bailey?
Vice Chair Bailey is aye.
Cheryl Hutchins, aye.
Paul Thibodeau, aye.
Yes.
And Tracy Hardicott is aye as well. Enjoy the sun, sir.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks.
I don't know if the rest of you, I've looked into solar on my property. I don't have the right, I'm jealous. Given our electric bills right now, I'm really jealous. Okay, next up, I have case number 118-67-GR-23- variance. It is 9:37. May we continue, board?
No objection.
Yes.
Okay with that one more, please? Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Mr. LaFranca? Yes. Okay. George and Ellen Rose? We're back to Mr. Barry.
I have to recuse myself,
Again?
which means I'm going home early. As well.
Oh, no, you have to stay and watch.
Listen, while you're out, give me a copy. Here.
So the good
I'll
news
stay.
is that we're revising the meeting minutes with a few corrections, so we're not voting on that. So if he does leave, is he missing anything? I'm just looking.
No, I have a few updates.
We're not doing the bylaw. Okay, so you can stick around or you can go, Mr. Thibodeau. Would you
We're
be?
gonna dog you the half hour.
George and Ellen. Well, that will leave them with 4 voting members, not 5. And are you able to speak on their behalf, that that's appropriate? Are they online and they can speak for themselves?
Yes, ma'am, I believe.
There's a letter.
Oh, we have a letter in the packet allowing it. Fabulous.
We do have a letter in the packet allowing.
Thank you, sir. Okay,
Mr. Barry.
you're on.
What was that, Shama?
I don't know.
My comment
Comments online. Go ahead, Mr. Barry.
Very well in your part to have that letter is what I was
There
saying.
you go.
Vanessa has trained me well.
Go.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, again, my name is Christopher Berry. I'm with Berry Surveying and Engineering, and I represent the Roses here this evening. The Roses, I'll try to keep this as short as possible, but I do want to ensure that my written documents have been read and are part of the record. But in the essence of the late hour, I will summarize our comments. So the Roses own a parcel of land on Michael Point Road, which is situated on Swains Lake. There is frontage on both Michael Point Road and Swains Lake. The lot was created in 1955 through subdivision. It's actually stamped and signed by Grant Davis, who was a land surveyor from the city of Dover. And we believe that the previous house that was built on site was built in 1960, and that's per the tax cards. However, I have come to find from crawling around inside the house that the house was likely lifted over the years and new cement block put in, but essentially the same footprint has existed since the construction. The Roses are going under or undertaking a renovation of the inside of the structure. The structure itself to the overhang of the house is just a little over 1,000 square feet, so it is a relatively modest sized structure. And it is a house that they have inherited over the years. The family's owned it for many, many years, since the mid-80s. And they're looking to make it their full-time residency. They currently live in Ashland, Massachusetts, and they intend to move here. So the existing structure is 3 bedrooms. The proposed structure is 3 bedrooms. The existing internal mechanism of the home is being renovated to accommodate full-time year-round living. And the variance application before you today is to add an addition, a small addition off the north side of the property. The purpose of which is to provide for some better access into the building. So as you can see from the photographs that we provided you, currently the second floor of this structure, which is really the living space, is accessed by a large staircase that goes down into the front lawn. What the Roses are proposing to do is there will be bedrooms in the basement elevation, which is at grade at lake level essentially, and at grade at the front level, if you can imagine a split level home. The front porch will act as the new main entrance to the structure, and they will enter the new addition off the north side and then go up a set of stairs to the second floor. And by doing that, they're able to take the staircase that currently juts into the middle of the structure. So there's a staircase in the basement that juts way into the structure here. They're able to take those stairs, push them further into the addition, and basically this addition will be used for a coat room, a mud room, if you will, and then access upstairs into the living space, and then downstairs into the basement as well. So again, much like a conventional split level home where you walk in, you can go up one level or, a few stairs, or down a couple of stairs, that will be the setup. So though the variance is requested for an increase in the building size, really the livable footprint does not change. It allows for a reconfiguration inside the house to be more favorable. It does allow for some additional storage that will now be needed due to the full-time use. The proposed setback to the north side of the boundary is 18.5 feet, and that is to the proposed overhang. And we are proposing to step the structure back along the rear edge so that we're not encroaching any further closer to the lake than the existing structure that exists now. Setback in this zone is typically 30 feet, and so we're asking for a reduction down to 18. In terms of special conditions of the property, There are a number of them. First, the overall size. This was subdivided in the fifties and is small compared to the size of a standard lot today. However, not incongruent with other lots on the same road in the same area. Other special conditions, there's a well down by the water's edge. And there's a septic system that's sort of placed in the front lawn. So there's an existing septic system here in the front. And if you'll notice, the structure sits closer to the southern side of the property than the northern side of the property. And so that's why the northern side of the property was chosen. There's additional space there. It's also within what I call the footprint of the lot. So if you can imagine being on a parcel and having the home and then some tillage area around the structure, it's within the used footprint of the parcel. So we're not proposing any vegetation to be removed on the north side of the boundary, and we're not proposing any vegetation to be removed closer to the lake either. We are within the shoreline protection zone, so we do require a shoreline protection permit. Based on the coverages on site, we are proposing 2 dry wells be installed. The way this roof line runs, it's a little odd. This is about the center line of the home. This roof line runs to the south side, and this roof line will continue to run to the north side of the boundary. Gutters will be placed on the eaves of those strip lines, and the stormwater will be plumbed to an infiltration dry well to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff directed at the lake directly. Currently, the gutter system and French drain system that's installed directs the water through a pipe to this location here, and it's direct discharged into the lake. So this is a benefit to the lake by reducing the amount of flow and volume to the lake. Nutrient load would be reduced to the lake, and I wouldn't say most importantly, but also important is when you take stormwater off from a roof, infiltrate it into the ground and not directly send it to the water body. We're finding now that the heated water coming off from those surfaces, the oxygen removes oxygen from water. I don't know the proper way to say that. And so we're improving that capability of the site as well. Again, no vegetation is being proposed to be removed along the water's edge. It will still remain compliant there. And the natural woodland buffer that is existing on site is not proposed to change. So with that, if the board has questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. If not, I can move through the 5 criteria.
Quick question, as I'm facing the front of the property.
Yep.
Over to the left-hand side, I don't know north and south directions.
So here's the north.
Yeah, now don't even try and teach me.
Okay.
You're not gonna, I know what I'm not good at, Mr. Mayor. Over to the left-hand side, how much space is there between this property now and the neighbor's property? 70 feet, 50 feet?
Nope. So there's 29 feet between the existing structure and the northern boundary line or the left-hand boundary line.
Okay,
We're proposing 18 and a half feet there.
so you're moving, okay, and it looks like that house, that the neighbor's house is far enough into their boundary line that they won't be on top of it. There'll be plenty of space there.
Yes, so the existing structure on this parcel, the existing residential structure is there.
Oh, so that's not, that small square I'm looking at is a shed or something?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
This is the.
I was
residential
most,
structure.
yeah, excellent. I
This-
was just concerned about how close that change came to the neighbor's property.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Okay, 5 criteria, please, sir.
So the special conditions of the property owing to the unnecessary hardship, I think we've pointed out, the age of the lot, the shape of the lot, the size of the lot, how much water frontage this parcel has. Its building footprint as it exists currently are all special conditions of the property. There is simply no additional place to add on to this structure reasonably on this lot. And so denial of the variance would cause an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, whereas it would allow for, or would not allow for the reasonable reconstruction of even the interior of the home. Because all of this is predicated on having a new stairway and entrance into the home and changing how the home operates internally. Granting the variance would be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. In this particular case, these lots are all created prior to your zoning, probably, well, I won't make that statement, but created well prior to your zoning. And so zoning really is in an effort to create uniformity in a neighborhood. In traveling up and down Micah Point Road, there's really no specific uniformity. Each of the houses seem to be placed in an effort to allow for additional space between each one of them. And I think that the fact that this proposal sits inside of the existing used space does not require that the roses go vertical in their construction and is seemingly modest in size. I think that the spirit of the ordinance is met. Additionally, I would point out, as I have in my writings, that we are really no closer to the abutting boundary lines than either of our closer neighbors. Granting the variance will not result in a diminution. Here again, this is a structure that has been utilized and underutilized as a seasonal home. Large amounts of renovation have taken place and will continue to take place on site and will raise the value of this home and thus likely the others in the neighborhood. The proximity to this structure to the abutting boundary line, since we are not modifying vegetated buffers between the lots, will not have a diminution on surrounding property values. Granting the variance will do substantial justice. Again, this is a test of the gain to the applicant versus the detriment to the ordinance, the town, and the surrounding population. In this particular case, we don't see any detriment to the underlying ordinance. The ordinance is created for the sole purpose of creating uniformity on lots that are conforming. This lot is clearly not conforming. We don't believe that this small addition will have an impact on the abutting landowners, and therefore the gain to the applicants by allowing for their home to be used in a much more efficient or congruent way is a large gain to the applicant at no expense to the ordinance, the town, or the abutting landowners. Granting the variance would not become contrary to public interest. Here again, development and redevelopment of sites in this particular way, I think meets the public interest test, whereas the roses they have the option of removing the structure, reshaping its footprint and going up vertically and meeting the 35 or 40 foot height requirements. They're choosing not to do that. I think that this structure, as they proposed it, the architectural features that are proposed by the architect and the builders are modest, and I think they're in keeping with the ordinance, the spirit of the ordinance, and the spirit of the neighborhood in general.
Across the street from that, is there a property where this new structure will decrease the sight line to the lake for that individual?
Nope, so the Roses own the parcel across the street.
Oh, problem solved. Thank you.
I have no questions.
Any other questions? Okay. Public comment. Would anyone like to speak for or against this variance? No. Okay. Anyone online? Okay. Well, thank you all for hanging in there. I think it's our longest meeting yet. At this time, I'll close public comment in reference to case 11867 GR 25 variance, and I will make a motion to approve the request for variance with justification for the variance being that literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship as there is no additional spot to add on to or no ability to reconstruct so that it could become a year-round home. That granting the ordinance would be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance, since historically the spacing in the neighborhood was set up long before ordinances were in place. That granting the variance would not result in the diminution of the surrounding. Wow. Couple of master's degrees and I can't read it. Diminution of the surrounding property values. It won't decrease the value for the neighbors, and thank you for pointing out that they own the lot across the street. I was thinking any blocking of a view for someone could do that, so thank you. That granting the variance would do substantial justice, potentially raising the value of the home and certainly making it more useful for the Roses. Granting the variance would not be contrary to public interest, as the development is not infringing upon anyone else's view or rights. Second,
Second.
and a roll call vote beginning with Vice Chair Bailey.
I've approved,
I.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for the longest meeting of your lives at this meeting.
Wait, last time was longer.
I know. So at this time, motion to adjourn?
No,
What do we got?
Some views.
Oh, she's got something. Sorry. Go
I'll
ahead.
be brief. So we are not approving the minutes tonight.
We're not approving the minutes. tonight.
I need to make some revisions. Just some quick updates. As you can see, the blue books, that's the new year. It's new for this year, so throw out your old books. Staff's working on new zoning application and it's under review by Laura right now to make it flow easier and make sure that it's meeting the RSA. And the zoning amendments, I just had provided those to y'all just to know that what the planning board is going forward, on the website. Town administrator has created a website to put, not just the zoning amendments, but all the other warrant articles as well on there. We'll have a little bit of more information and maps. We'll be there. Just wanted to make sure everybody got a physical copy of the rules of procedure. Yeah. And, one last thing about, we can talk about this separately. If anybody has any issues getting online, I left everybody their credentials to log into.
Yes.
You all have, so let me start over. I'm sorry. You all now have Town of Barrington emails. After tonight, I'll be using that as a form of invitation. So let me make sure I'm getting those. To log into it, I was told.
I knew you weren't listening.
Check my own email.
Well, now you log into www.outlook.office.com is what Rockport had told me.
Or the app on your phone, just do office. Thank you, Mr. Barry. Is that yours or is that ours?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I was also told.
Hang on, we're still online for the meeting. We haven't adjourned yet. So you all have an Office 365 town-owned email now.
You can also log into outlook.com. I was told you didn't have to have it, but I don't.
You can do it.
oh, you can do that.
I meant for,
Oh, yeah.
for Cheryl.
Do you have an iPhone or a?
No,
No.
I don't, and I don't have
A
a
tablet thing that you use to do all your,
I don't have a tablet, someone stole it.
what's the thing you play
I
with?
have a Chromebook.
Okay, that will
We
get
can
you
do
in.
it.
That will get you in.
Yes.
Done.
Or I.
Yeah, I'll show you how to do it. You just go into Outlook. That's all you gotta do.
It's okay.
Programs on it.
It's okay, we'll get you one. I get it.
That's
It's
all I
fine.
have.
Yes, okay. And once per year, we'll review the bylaws. We had talked about, looking at the cost of different fees. I prefer to wait a full year before we change the bylaws again. Hopefully you all agree with that decision. Okay. So, motion to adjourn? And a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Yeah.
Adjourning at 9:58 PM.
Oh, it's before 10.
It is before 10, aren't we?